here on the scrum.org, and it gives a brief resources that we can use it for the Scrum learning part. So as described in the Scrum guide, the Scrum Master is responsible for promoting and supporting Scrum. Scrum Masters do this by helping everyone understand Scrum theories, practices, rules, and values. The Scrum Master learning path provides a structured guide to help you understand the role of a Scrum Master with a way to continue learning on your journey as a Scrum Master. The learning path is organized by a set of professional Scrum competencies, which each contain a number of focus areas, and resources are laid out in a prescribed order. However, it is your journey, so follow the best way that helps you learn. So, in a way to understand and to apply the Scrum empirisms, let's go and first check out the Agile Manifesto. Manifesto for Agile Software Development. We are uncovering the better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Through this work, we have to come to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working softwares over comprehensive documentations, customer collaborations over contract negotiations, responding to change over following a plan. That is, while there is value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. And these are the authors. And there is also one more thing, that is 12 principles of the agile software. So if you go across this, we'll be knowing that 12 what are the 12 principles for the agile manifestos. So here it goes. Our highest priority is to satisfy the customers through early and continuous delivery of the valuable software. The first principle states that it is our first priority to always satisfy the end consumer, our customer, through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. Second is welcome changing requirements. Even late in the development, agile process harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. In this agile, whenever we get a requirements from the customer side, whether it is in the main stage, whether it is in the middle stage, or whether it is in the very early stages, it has to adapt, and the development team has to adapt and harness the changes as per the customer's competitive advantage and the requirements. Deliver working software frequently, from a couple of weeks to a couple of months, within a preference to a shorter time scales. Whatever will be the releases, whatever will be the short modules that we are going to complete, being as a project coordinators and being as a development team, we have to do it very frequently, within a weeks or within a month. So by doing that, it will keep on delivering the small modules to the end customers. It makes us reliable. Business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. Business people and the development team must work daily throughout the project, because if you're not doing it on a daily basis, it will give you some kind of inconsistency, and there will be some communication and confusion gaps, so that you need to communicate daily, as the development of agile says, and build projects around motivated individuals. Give them environment and support they need, and trust them to get the job done. Always try to motivate the people around you, your teammates and your individuals, whoever you are working with. Your environment should always be highly motivated, and you always keen on supporting whatever they need for. So just trust them and get the trust all over your entire team. This makes a good environment around you. The most efficient and the effective method of conveying informations to and within the development as a team is to face conversation. Whenever there is something that you need to communicate with anyone in an entire team, there is only one way to do it, is the face to face conversation that will effectively and efficiently gives you gain in communication also, and in the terms of trust. So always do that. Working software is a primary measure of a progress. How we can measure the progress of our particular software development is only the measure of the progress of the software, working software. In any meantime, in the early stages or in the late stages or in the middle stages, customer asks you what is the progress, then there must be something which is ready to deliver. And the ready to deliver is the only thing you can measure. Agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, the developers, and the users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. The indefinite path of the development should have this sustainable development and the continuous attention to the technical excellence and a grouped designs enhance agility. Simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done, is essential. The architecture, requirements, and the designs emerge from self organizing teams. At regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective and then tunes energies and behaviors accordingly. So, these are the 12 principles that we need to go work on, that we need to learn. Okay, so these are the main importance things that we really need to check it on. Then, if we go back here, these are all the things, and if you go, these are the languages that you can go and to check it out. And there's nothing else. Okay, and let me close this, and we can go back again. We can go back, and we can go back. So here is the Agile Manifesto that we have completed, and we can mark it complete. Then there is the next thing is the three pillars of empirism. Okay, empirism. Empiricism means working in a fact-based, experience-based, evidence-based manner. It's fact-based, experience-based, and evidence-based manner. Scrum implements an empirical process where process is based on observations of reality, not the fictitious plans. Scrum also places great emphasis on a mindset and cultural shift to achieve business and organizational agility. The three pillars of empiricism as follows are transparency, adaptation, and inspection. So let's see in a deep what these three are. As per the given flow diagram, you can see that the chart, the pie chart, is transparency, adaptation, and inspection collides each other, collaborate each other, then only these three pillars gives you a goal, a motivated value. So transparency simply means we all know what is going on in the entire team from the top to bottom. Everyone should know, everyone should be on the same page, whatever is the progress, whatever is going on inside the company. Adaption. Adaption is to okay change, okay to change in a tactical direction. Adaption is simply means whenever there is a requirement, whenever there is a requirement from the customer side, whenever there is a need of any changes from the product owner, from the Scrum side, from the development team, there has to be a direction, there has to be a plan to change, to adapt the particular change and do it. Okay, so that is called adaptation. And the third one is inspection. Check your work as you do it. Inspection is not like any inspection team or inspection in which leaders will come and check your progress. Inspection is just in within the inspection, within the your teammates, your scrum master, your development team, whoever is there, your project team, they can inspect their own work on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. Like, do we follow the policies? Are we into the guidelines? Are we into the timelines? Are we doing everything as per the rules and regulations? These are the inspections that is done within the team and within the project. There is now no inspections doing from outside. The outside inspection is done from the customer side. That is after delivering the project, he will give you the feedback. That is also one kind of inspection doing it. But the inspection that you need to do it is inside the team while working on the project. Okay, so let's see these three things. Transparency. This means presenting the facts as it's all people involved, the customer, the CEO, individual contributors, and the transparent is a day-to-day dealings with others. A transparent in their day-to-day dealing with others. Nobody is lying. Everybody is transparent. Nobody is lying to anybody else. They all trust each other and they have a courage to keep each other abreast of a good news as well as a bad news. Everyone strives and collectively collaborates for the common organizational objective, and no one has any hidden agenda. So everyone is working on for the same objective, for the organizational objective. That is what is transparency. If everyone is working for the same thing, then why anybody will hide? That is the main motive around this transparency. Okay. Then second one is inspection. Inspection is a context, is not an inspection by an inspector or an auditor, but inspection is by everyone on the Scrum team. The inspection can be done with the product, process, people, aspects, practices, and continuous improvements. For example, the team openly and transparently shows the product at the end of each sprint of the customer in order to give or gather value feedback. If the customer changes the requirements during the inspection, the team does not complain but rather adapts to using it an opportunity to collaborate with the customers to clarify the requirements and to test out new hypotheses. So that means there is not going to be an inspection from the outside world, and not a foreign body is coming to inspect you or your team or your work. It's just the inspection from your own self, from your own team, from your own people. Okay, and just for the continuous improvement, continuous aspects and practices. Okay, it's a kind of a good prospect. Whenever you do something, you review it. That is called the inspection. For example, a team is openly and transparently showing the product of the end of the each sprint, and after each sprint, the customer, they're showing their end release to the customers, and customers are coming up with the valuable feedback, and they need to be some change in the software and the requirements. So that is during the inspection, that is during the review part of it. And then the team does not go and complain to the Scrum Master, to the product owner, that we have done this much of work and now he is saying to change this and change that. That should not be the, that should not be the manner, that should not be the process in agile. It should be rather it should be they have to adapt it by they take it as an opportunity to collaborate with the customers to clarify and test out with the new hypothesis for the coming requirements. That is what is the inspection. And adaptation is the same thing, that if customer is coming with a new objective, with a new something, then we have to encourage it, our teammates to work on it. Adaptation is the context in about continuous improvement. It's the ability to adapt based on the results in the inspection. Everyone in the organizations must ask these questions regularly. Are we better off than yesterday? For profit based organizations, the values is presented in the terms of profit, and the adaptation should eventually rely back to one of the reasons for adapting agile. For example, faster time to market, increased return on the investment through value, best delivery, reduced total cost of ownership through the enhanced software quality, and improved customers and employee satisfaction. The adaptations is simply is based on the customer satisfaction. What we are doing is within the team is just we are delivering the particular set of requirements that is from the customer side, and if we are delivering it with the very best of ourselves, that is what is adaptation is like. Wherever the change the customers is thinking, or the best adaptation is the customer should not think any of the new requirements, and you should give it with the new requirements and something else that you are doing it in the coding and in your project development. The customer should feel from from your side that some you guys are really very smart, and so that he don't have to think a new requirements or new improvements. That is called adaptions. And if you are doing it on a daily basis, like on the one that you have already done and the other thing that you're doing it tomorrow, if you're doing it the way better than today, then that's all you're doing it. Okay, there's nothing that you have to worry about it. Okay, let's then do it. The Scrum works not because it has three rules, five events, and three artifacts. Scrum works not because it has three rules, five events, three rules. If you're saying we'll come across all the rules and events and the three artifacts, but because it adheres to underlying agile principles of iterative, value-based increment, delivery of frequently gathering customers' feedback, and embracing change. Okay, this results in a faster time to market, better delivery productivity, increased customer responsiveness, ability to change directions by managing changing priorities, enhanced software quality, and improved risk management. So this is what is a Scrum. A Scrum is not just because of the roles. The three roles as Scrum Master, product owner, and the development team. These are the three roles. and 5 events. We'll go and check it out. What are the 5 events in the coming sessions? And 3 artifacts, that is just the 3 pillars. What we are saying is adaptation, inspection, and what is the third one? Can you guess? Adaptation, inspection, and transparency. Transparency, adaptations, and adaptation. So let's remind it. TIA, TIA, TIA. Transparency, inspection, and adaptation is the 3 pillars of the Scrum. Transparency, inspection, and adaptation. TIA is a pillar of Scrum. Just remember it, okay? So here is this book, and so we're done with this. We can go back, or we can go next in the same thing. So agile is a verb, not a not a noun. Are we yet? Okay, so let's go back. We're done with the pillars. We can mark it complete. And then next thing is empiricism is an essential element of Scrum. Let's see that. Empiricism is an essential element of Scrum. So let's hear what is it saying. Okay.
Hi, I'm Mark Noneman. I'm a professional Scrum trainer with Scrum.org, and I work for the Madison Henry Group. And today I want to talk to you about empiricism. And Scrum, of course, is built on top of empiricism, and it's the most crucial element to understand as you're trying to get Scrum to work in your environment. So what is this idea of empiricism? Well, of course, empiricism is a philosophy that we learn best from our actual experiences. And to use empiricism, that helps us emerge really the best fit solution to complex problems. And of course, Scrum is designed for complex problems. Now, to explain empiricism, I like to use an analogy of the thermostat. Everybody has one, you're used to it, but you might not think of it as an empirical device. So let's see, how does a thermostat work? Well, first it samples the temperature in the room, or inspects, as we say in empiricism, and then based on comparing that inspected temperature with the goal temperature, the set temperature on a thermostat, it adapts. It decides how to adjust the temperature to get closer to the goal. So if it's too far above the set temperature, it calls for air conditioning to move the temperature down toward the goal, or if the temperature is too low, it calls for heat to move it up toward the goal, or if it's right at the goal or near the goal, it doesn't do anything right now, but we'll inspect again shortly. Now, to make empiricism work, there's 3 things that you have to have besides this inspect and adapt feedback loop. First of all, as I already said, you have to know what the goal is. And on the thermostat, of course, that's the set temperature. But there's another thing that's very important, and that is we have to inspect and adapt frequently enough to keep the temperature under control. So imagine if you had a thermostat that you bought at the discount store that only sampled the temperature once a day. Now here it is, it's 2:03, time to sample the temperature, and it's too hot. So turn on the air conditioning and we'll check again tomorrow. That's going to be very uncomfortable between now and then. So we have to sample frequently enough, inspect and adapt frequently enough to stay under control. And there's another very important aspect of empiricism to make it work properly. And again, using the analogy of the thermostat, it's this idea of transparency. That is to say, knowing exactly what's going on. Now, a couple months ago, I was in London. I was at a conference, and as you probably know, in England, every day at 4 o'clock, it's tea time. Everybody turns on their electric kettle. Imagine it's 4 o'clock. I turn on my kettle for tea, and I put that kettle right underneath the thermostat. What's going to happen? Well, the thermostat's going to read bad data. It's going to inspect the incorrect temperature and adapt incorrectly. It's going to think it's warmer, it's going to call for air conditioning, and the temperature in the room will move improperly away from the goal. So again, for empiricism to work properly, we're going to be inspecting and adapting. And in order to adapt properly, we got to know what we're adapting to. So the goal has to be crystal clear. Second of all, we've got to inspect and adapt frequently enough in order to keep things under control. So for example, I would rather have shorter sprints in Scrum than longer sprints, because that'll allow me to ensure that I'm adapting toward the goal properly. And finally, we have to be transparent. We have to inspect what's actually going on so that when I decide to make an adaptation, we're adapting according to the actual environment. So don't forget that empiricism is an essential element of Scrum and is the critical way by which we can emerge the best fit solution to complex problems. This is Mark Noneman from Madison Henry. If you need more help, go to the scrum.org webpage or madisonhenry.com, and we'll see you in a class.
So this was Mark Nolman. He was explaining about the empiricism. I hope you understand with this video is how important is empiricism. So let's get back to this. We completed this, and then we'll mark it. So next is the transparency in the trenches. Okay, let's see how it is. So transparency in the trenches. Again, we got a video, so we'll hear it with the video, and then let's see how we can see what is it. If transparency in the trenches, lessons from the field of the Inspire Your Organization Agile journey. Dan Solan introduces the pillar of transparency in the Scrum and will navigate you through a journey of successes and challenges. And he's encountered in his years of coaching and training Scrum teams and around the globe, and all of which hinged around these important principles of agility, specific artifacts, and the behavior from the actual Scrum projects will surprise and inspire you while offering ideas to realize the benefits of the transparency in your own organizations. So let's see how the transparency works in real time in Scrum.
Hello everyone, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Welcome to Scrum Pulse. My name is Ravi Verma. I will be your moderator today. Really excited about today's session. The title is Transparency in the Trenches, and we have the most inspiring and passionate speakers that I've ever met, Dan Sloan. Before we get started, I want to tell you guys a little bit about what Scrum Pulse is. So this is a free monthly webinar facilitated by scrum.org. Questions.
So let's dive in today. We're going to talk about transparency. So 3 things for today. First, I'm going to introduce a few definitions of transparency, draw from a few sources, just to ground all of us in terms of what transparency means on the surface. Then we're going to dive in and look at a case study of an actual multi-Scrum team, globally distributed effort, a number of struggles that they were having with transparency, and I'm going to share with you some of the things that happened and some of the things they did to start promoting transparency within this large group, which ultimately helped them to start to realize the benefits of Agile and Scrum. So we're going to go into this into an interesting bit of detail. I'm going to share some artifacts, behaviors. Some stuff here is a little bit surprising and even extreme, but it's a really good, real situation to learn from. We'll summarize what we've learned along the way toward the end, and then we'll leave some time at the end of our talk today for some Q&A. Okay, well let's dive in. So for those of you that are familiar with Scrum, let's say you're using Scrum in your organization, as you know, an effective implementation of Scrum is built on a foundation based on these 3 pillars. These have to be functioning very well to optimize the use of Scrum within your organization. Inspection, adaptation, and transparency. So we talk about inspecting things within the Scrum framework, like inspecting the sprint backlog, to inspect our progress as a Scrum development team. Inspecting the increment of software, for example, to adapt what we work on next in our product backlog. Inspecting things in Scrum in order to make the adaptations we need to optimize the outcome of our work and the value of the product that we work on. For inspection and adaptation to be effective, the things that you do inspect have to be done transparently, so that the people that are inspecting things in Scrum have a common understanding of what they're looking at. A few questions to help you understand transparency within teams. What are we looking at? What's going on? Could be a question about a challenge or an opportunity surfaced in a Scrum retrospective. Sometimes I'll see teams ask questions like, well, what's actually happening? But then they'll insert the word really in there. So what is really happening? And that can be an interesting way to surface questions within teams where transparency could be a challenge. So think about these three pillars of Scrum. We're going to come back to these off and on throughout the talk. So let's draw from a couple of sources on the meaning of transparency. The first is from the publicly available Scrum Guide, recently moved and released on the scrumguides.org website. So I encourage you to go there and download a copy if you haven't before. There is a snippet from the Scrum Guide about transparency, transparency being that common standard that people use when they inspect something. So an example of that in Scrum would be, say, using the definition of done when a Scrum team and its stakeholders inspect the increment of software. A great example of that. So our common understanding of what we're looking at is the definition of done. That way we all know what's done and what's not done. And there are no questions about that. Everybody knows what they're looking at, transparency. So there are lots of aspects, as you see the word aspects there, to Scrum and where transparency applies. Another definition to draw from is right out of wikipedia.org, and this is more of a behavioral definition of transparency. So look at some of the words in there. Openness, communication, accountability. So when you think of it from a behavioral perspective, transparency is when people and groups of people are operating in a way that makes it very easy for all of us to see what everybody else is doing, what actions are being performed, and it's all very open. If you think about this from the standpoint of organizational culture, the way people behave and when they feel comfortable behaving transparently, it very much depends on how those people feel within those organizations. Are they in environments where they feel safe and trusted so that they...
So this is all about the transparency lenses, and we'll see something and the next step. Let's go back to the next one. This is transparency. So what is agile really about? We'll see this one. So what is agile really about? A couple of months ago, I wrote a blog. So this is just about a blog. What is agile? So let's go through it. Although the term agile is a context of software development is a quite well-known, definitions vary. Therefore, I shared the most common descriptions of agile, for example. So we're just getting these things from the Barry Overeem. Agile is a set of values and a principle that is into Agile Manifesto that we have seen the 12 principles of Agile. Agile is a set of values and principles. Okay, and Agile is a way of developing software that reminds us that although computers run the code, it's the people who create and maintain it. Okay, this is very important. This is very important line. It's a kind of very deep thinking. Agile is a way of developing software that reminds us to all the computer runs the code, but it's the people who create it. It's all about the coders. It's all about the development teams who code this, who develop the software. Agile is courage to be honest and enough to be admit that building software is complex and it can be perfectly planned since requirements change. And every time since the requirements are getting changed in a while in a way, so it's really to be the not to be the easiest thing. Okay, although these definitions offer some clarity, I still receive some requests to explain what agile really means in daily practice. Last week, during a training about leading agile transformations, I stumbled upon the perfect answers, and during the training, the seven principles continuous innovations were briefly discussed, and these principles are described in the book of the Leader's Guides to the Radical Measurement. So these are the books and the things that he is trying to say. So let's see about the seven principle of the continuous innovations. Let's check out what are the necessary things that we needed to learn from this. Okay, so these are the seven things that he has mentioned here, and it's all about these principles of continuous innovations. Delights clients, delighting clients, focus work on delighting the client. It's all begins by getting an goal right. The The purpose of work is to delight the client, not mostly to produce goods or services or making money for shareholders. Once the goal becomes money making for the company, then people start thinking about making money for themselves, and collaborations and creative tend to fall by wayside. So it's all about saying that it's the Scrum is all about the agility, or the continuous innovation is all about delighting the clients, the customers. We should always work to make our customers happy, because they are only to pay us and they are only the one for whom we are working. It's not about making money, or it's not about doing any going on any other agenda. If we start thinking about making money for ourselves or making money for themselves, it's all about, then it will fall. The goal will fall from ourselves. And the key to the engineering future is to have a customer who is willingly to buy goods and services both today and tomorrow. It's not about the transactions. It's about the foregoing a relationship, right? It's all about building a customer relationship. Whenever we are building something, we want the people should use it now and then and again in future. It's not about one time thing. If you're a company, you want your customers to come again for the same thing. So you just make sure, just try and make sure that your customers, your end customers is getting happier at the end of the at the end of the day. Okay. And self-organizing teams, do work through self-organizing teams. I think it's hard for those who have never been on the high performance team to understand just how cool it is. When we work together with people who have different interpretations, perspective, and ways of solving problems, we often able to solve problems we couldn't able to solve them. So you should always work in that team where people are having different perspective, people are having different mindsets to just solve the problems, not for any other sort of things. Okay. And if you have a different interpretations, perspective, minds, then it collaborate and they will able to solve the problems in very different kind of ways that you have never thought of it. And the complex problem, like discovering ways to delight the clients, is the best solves the cognitively diverse the group of people and give responsibility for solving the problems. A client driven iterations. So do work in a client driven iterations. We always work into for client driven iterations. That means it's still small is easy to direct. Through client driven iterations, companies are able to keep inventory and work in the process as small as possible and customize the product not only to meet customers original perceived needs, but also to adjust it meets any changes in those needs. So this is a part of adaptations. So we always have to work in that way in which we have a chance. We should always keep a chance aside where any new change could be easily accommodated. Okay, we can easily accommodate a new change with the time frame at any given point of time from the customer side. So client-driven iterations improve productivity and organizations by focusing the work on the elements and the really add value and eliminating work from the doesn't add value. So it always give a new value to our work, and also the client will get more happier whether if it's getting a new added advantage, whether it's getting a new requirements getting added in the prior environment list. So delivering a value to the clients in each iterations. Client-driven iterations imply mental revolutions, a different way of thinking about a work. The key stores. A small thing delivered soon can delight more than a big thing delivered later. Like you know that we should always try to deliver. Like if you're getting a progress, if you're getting a project, if you keep on delivering something, like if a project is going to take a year, if a project is going to take a month, if a project is going take a week, why don't you try to deliver something, or something like a basic module on every day, a basic module on every month. It's it just make like how you use your social medias, how you use your normal applications. You keep on getting the new updates, you keep on getting the new things in your apps. That is what it makes you happy to see that, because if you keep on using the same thing, if you're not getting any new increments, any new things, you will get bored with the like being as at the side of the customers. If you're at the side of a customers and if you keep on waiting for your product to be get ready and released, and they told you that it will take around a year, then you have to wait for a year to your product to become. No, but what if there is a team who will keep on delivering you your own product in a module basis, so that your interest will be there, the company's interest will be there, the team development interest will be there. Development team always needs the appreciations, and the continuous appreciations makes them good value, give them a good value. Okay, this is called the clients in each iteration, delivering value to the clients in each iterations. This is what is about. Okay, I'm getting a good knowledge from this, I hope you do. Radical transparency. Be totally open about impedance to improvements. The truth will send you free. Be totally about impedance to improvements. Radical transparency. Radical transparency is basically, it's all about the three pillars. TR, transparency, inspection, and adaptations. So we talk about the adaptations, we talk about the inspections, we talk about transparency. Now again, we are talking about transparency. It's a radical transparency basically means this should be totally open impedance to improvements. Whatever the fallouts, whatever you are doing wrong, whatever it's going bad, whatever is going good, whatever is needs to be appreciated, you have to be open with the clients. You have to be open with everyone on the same page. Okay? The truth will set you free. But first, I will piss you off. That is why the glorious demon. Achieving the complex goal of the client's delight requires a total openness about the independence of the work and everyone levels with everyone else. Radical measurements, radical management accept the inevitability of the failures and puts arrangements in place of the run. As soon as you go with the bad fallouts to your team, some or other, you will get some improvisations and get some good thoughts and thinking about how to solve that problem. So better to be open. If you are doing something wrong or if something had happened, there's nobody has this intention of doing something wrong, but always we are humans, we can do something which is unnecessary, unrequired in the project, but it happens. So be ready to confess it and make it right to the better, and then deliver it with the best of you can. Continuous self improvement. Create a context of continuous self improvement by the team. Continuous self improvement is a deeply rooted set of values and attitudes focused on fixing a problems. This is what I'm talking about. As soon as they occur, any problems within you, within your team, you have to be ready. You have to be self improvised. Okay, that is what we call as self improvises. Try to figure out whatever you can do to solve that problem. If not you can do it, then you have to go within your team, within your members, your coordinators, your mentors, your scrum master, your product developer, and your product owner, that we can fix this problem by doing this and these things. That is called the self improvement. Okay, and continuous self improvement is a top management responsibility. It is the top management responsibility to have a continuous self improvement. Is a fragile and therefore needs everyday nutritions and attentions. Interactive communications, this is again is called as a transparency. You can count this in a transparency. Interactively shares the stories, questions, and conversations. It is very best way to communicate within your team. It is a very best way to interact. Okay, the modern organizations cannot be an organization of a boss and subordinate. It must be organized as a team of associates. Interactive communication is the key of everything. So in the modern organizations, there is no boss or subordinate. It's like common organizations, and everyone is a kind of associates. Okay, so traditional managers speak to employees as employees, and power is the currency of the communications. The radical manager communicates as a human being to another, and hierarchy is present, but in the background. So in the modern organizations, there must be hierarchy, but the hierarchy is in the background. It has no relevant in it is going on in the present situation when the project is going on. You can talk to your director, you can talk to your owner, you can talk to your CEO, you can talk to your CEO if it needed. There should be so much of transparency in the communication, and it should be interactive as always. So these are the seven values that you're talking about agile. So let's go back again. So we're done with this. constant change. You know that agile is a constant change. One of the key foundation of the helping your business become agile is the use of empiricism. Empiricism is a scientific approach based on the evidence where any idea must be tested against observations rather than intuition. Empiricism is based on three pillars: transparency, inspection, and adaptations. Adaptation has many synonyms of being change in the most common. Okay, so adaptation has many synonyms, but the most common is change. Most and one of the reasons that I really like working with the Scrum framework is that there is clear learning opportunities within. Otherwise, you need to put yourself in this. After a short time, you and your team should reflect on what has happened and how it affected the performance within the team. Building on a better understanding, the team should dedicate and decide what they will do to enhance the good things and remove the bad things. This is you should focus on the changing the environment to be better. This means that brings with the different. If the situation is not different, then you have to not act it on learning on your team perfect. In a movie, Groundhog Dog, the weatherman Phil realizes that he is repeating the same day. He is then okay. So there's a movie called Groundhog Day. If you have not seen it, try to go and see it. The weatherman Phil realizes that he is repeating the same day. He then goes on wild and breaks all the rules, and then he gets bored and then focuses on improving. He then makes each day a little better than the previous day and until it gets a perfect day. The resistance to the change and suffer in the start of the movie is similar in the how it goes and struggle to enact the change. Okay. So what he's trying to say is that we need to keep on doing the inspection on our own work. This is how it works: experiment, experience, review and evaluate, examine, envision, adjust, modify, and again experiment, activate, experience, evaluate. So you have to keep on rotating the same wheel every time, wherever you go, however you go in your project, in your day to day, you have to have the same these four things. Keep on experimenting, keep on experiencing the new happenings, keep on measure or evaluating how it's going, take it into revision and envision and adjust and modify to make it even better, to enhance it even better. Okay, so this is all about agile. Agile is nothing but keep yourself a way better than before, a way better than yesterday, a way better than what you have done. Okay, so I've seen a number of teams get stuck because then they try to change too much. They don't see anything to change. The team is changing in a rate faster than the organization can accept. So these are the three things that is not a good thing. When they try to change too much, what is not needed, they don't see anything to change. When they are not getting what to change, or the team is changing at way faster than the organization can accept. You should never do all these things. Never try to go as fast as you want. Okay? It always be your organizations because you're working for the organizations. Everything that you're doing, it is only for your organization. So you stick to it. Try to change too much is always bad. Limit the number of things that you're going to change. It is insignificant. This is significant of changing the things that are only taken on one actions. So always there is only one, one, and one. There's only one thing to remember, okay? And that is always try to solve a single problem at a time. Take single problem at a time. Always take a single problem at a time in your life, in your daily life, in your working life, or wherever you go. Because taking a single problem at a time, whatever the problem is, make priorities and tackle single problem at a time. So do not try to make changes in a lot of things because it will impact the ecosystem. You have to be at the same goal. You have to try something, you have to experience something, try to change a single thing and experience it. If it affects something, if it is goes enhance, if it is better, then try to change another thing and have to review and then go for the next. Okay? Do always remember this: one thing at a time, one problem at a time, nothing to change. If you see nothing to change, so there is a one mindset that people always seems that there is nothing bad, there's nothing's bad happening, then why there is a need to change? If we don't see any change, if we don't see anything to change, then it is also a bad thing, because that means we are not reviewing it, or we are not giving it a better feedback. We are not receiving a better feedback. In both the situations we are around, this is to focus on a clear vision. It is a team has a common goal, then the current state of can be compared with that goal, and they find that one change that will need to give more benefit than the least of it. Once a change, no matter how the small, is intact and you're moving with the more momentum can grow. It's not about this, like, yeah, here can be asked a question that on what basis or on what context we can say that we are done, we have nothing to change, we have done everything. That's also a point where you will get this. But in the meantime, the time you reach there, the end of the story where you think that nothing gonna change, nothing has to be changed, before that time there are a lot of things to change, and you will get that while reviewing, while changing, while testing. Okay, so it goes on with the momentum. Okay, so do not make yourself so fast. And then last one is the team versus organization change. Often a smaller teams development in Scrum gains the insight that agility is continuous progress and a mindset, not a state. Often the smaller teams or the development in Scrum gain the insight that agility is a continuous progress and a mindset, not a state. Many organizational leaders think that agility is a silver bullet that gets invoked, and that is all that is required. So this is the best learning in this is it is not a process. I mean, it's not a state to change it. Like till yesterday it was something else, and now we started something else. It's a continuous improvement. You have to give your head. You have to think every day, every single day, to keep on change. Okay, and we have to change the mindset, not the state. It's not like a bullet. You can just fire it and it's gone. It's a kind of consolence, like it's a kind of a treatment. Okay, where we try to treat a disease. It takes time. So the organization needs to move to the mindset that things will be different every day, every week. That is the heart of the business agility. Helping this understanding take hold of a wider level of responsibility of those people helping develop the agility of the organizations. Depending upon the organizations, using a framework may help. The structure provides robustness needed to impact on the enduring change. You will know your team is actively being agile when you are able to phrase your four teams we have found. Describe your ways of working and using agile tools and techniques to deliver a better product and more frequently. Okay, so these are the things that we have learned and this. So we can go back and we can say that this is completed. So we have completed all this basic understanding of this empiricism, right? Let's go back to Scrum values. So there are things that we can go for the Scrum values, and we can see some Scrum values as these are the Scrum values. Scrum values include courage, focus, commitment, respect, and openness. One, two, three, four, five. These are the five values that we were talking about. So the first thing is courage, focus, commitment, respect, and openness. So we need to read the Scrum guide to learn more about these values and how they apply in Scrum and download the poster here. So we can see that in this PDF, and this is the thing: courage, focus, commitment, respect, and openness. Scrum values. So let's remind again. We got three roles in Scrums. First one is Scrum Master itself. Second one is the product owner, and the third one is the development team. These are the three roles in the Scrum development. Second thing, we got three Scrum principles. Okay, we can see that three principles or the pillars that or we call it as TIA. What is it, TIA? TIA is basically transparency, inspection, and adaptations. We have learned more about it. And then the five values. What are the five values? Courage. Scrum team members have courage to do the right thing and work on the tough problems. They should have the courage to work on the tough problem. They should have the courage to do the right thing always, okay? And the focus. Everyone focuses on work on the sprint and the goals of the Scrum team. Everyone's focus should be on the Scrum goal, okay? The sprint and the focus is on the Scrum team. Commitment. People personally commit to achieving the goals in the Scrum team. There should be a highly commitment towards the goal and towards the Scrum team. Respect. Scrum team members respect each other's to capable, independent people. Everyone should respect each and others and openness. The Scrum team and stakeholders agree to be open all about and work and challenges with performing the work. Openness is all about it's like transparency. Respect is all about is you can say about the adaptation and inspection and transparency also. Commitment is also there and focus and courage. So let's figure out it's CFCRO. CFCRO. So what is CFCRO? Is C is courage, focus, commitment, respect, and openness. So it'll be like let's make a something that so that we can like TR, transparency, inspection, and adaptations. We can also make a sentence or a word so that we can remember these things: courage, focus, commitment, respect, and openness. So we should always show courage. That's like army. We should always show courage. We should always focus on our goals. We should be committed. So courage, focus, and commitment is three things, and respect and openness are the other things. So how will we be able to remember it? Uh, go for Kore up. Go for Kore up. Go for Kore up. Let's see that. Go for Kore up. Go for Kore up. Go for Kore up is courage, focus, commitment, respect, and openness. Go for Kore up. Go for courage, focus, commitment, respect, and openness. Okay. So so these are the values. So we completed with the values. Let's go with this. Scrum Guide, updates Scrum Guide, the Scrum Values take center. So let's talk about this in detail. Today, Ken and Jeff, the creators of the Scrum, delivered a webinar on the latest update on the Scrum, and update on a simple one, adding a five values of the Scrum to the guide. When I say simple, I mean simple in terms that text changes the Scrum guide, not simple in text of what it means to the community and what people practicing Scrum. In fact, far from it. By making the Scrum values explicit and transparent, it may call your team's working approach in questions. But ultimately, these values provide values, what intended. In fact, I would go as far as they say the values amplify the power of Scrum and the providing the compass for decision making and team dynamics. The Scrum values and help teams adopt Scrum and deliver amazing softwares for their customers. So they create the great place to work and which is hyper and competitive environment. So as far as the author of the Scrum Guide, Ken and Jeff Sutherland, they were saying that these are the five values that we need to aware of, and if any company is working on these particular five, core of the courage, focus, commitment, and respect and openness, then the company will never go down. They will have a huge success. But there are large amount of companies who is following agile, who is following Scrum methods, but still they are not following on these five principles. And this diagram depicts the five values is commitment, courage, focus, openness, and respect. And I do repeat in the detail the definition of each. Gordon Brennan did a fantastic job describing these values. Instead, I want to focus on these values since they appear obvious. So when the values commitment, courage, focus, openness, and respect are embodied and lived in the Scrum team, the Scrum pillars of transparency, inspection, and adaptations come to life. as I told you, is same like the values and the pillars are based on the values. Okay, lives are based on our values and manners and respect to each others and the build trust for everyone. The Scrum team members learn and explore those values and they come for the Scrum events, rules, and artifacts. Okay, successful use of Scrum depends upon the people becoming more proficient in living and those five values. People personally commit to achieving the goals of the Scrum team. The Scrum team members have courage to do the right thing and work on tough problems. Everyone focuses on the work on the sprint and goals of the Scrum team. The Scrum team and its stakeholders agree to be open all about work and challenges and working on them. Scrum team members respect each other and are capable of independent people. Okay, values misunderstanding getting value right is commitment, focus. Commitment is committing to the something that you don't understand because you're told to or your boss. Committing yourself to the team and spirit. Focusing on keeping the customers happy. Being focused on the sprint and its goal. Telling everyone everything about all your work. Highlighting when you have challenges, focuses. Thinking you are helping the team by being a hero, helping people to learn things you're good at, and courage even after the decision has been made, the continue to push back, being transparent but willing to change these things. Values like anything in the Scrum needs to be both values and expecting the adaptations, and these are five ideas from my own experience on encouraging the values of the transparent and considered to be your Scrum team. Put the values on a wall and have each team member write up how they are going to demonstrate the value of their working day. Add a value movement to your retrospective. This gives everyone an opportunity to inspect and adapt on their values. Introduce a value prize, not a serious prize, but in fact a fun prize that sometimes can be delivered to the people and the whole. So, in this thing, we can see that there are some misunderstanding with these values. Commitment is not like committing to something that you don't understand and you're doing it. Okay, commitment is something that yourself to the team and the spirit of the goals. Focus is focusing on keeping the customers happy. Focusing is not only the keeping the customers happy. Focusing is on the sprint and the goal. The if you are achieving the goal, if you are focused on the goal, the customer is always going to be happy. Openness is not about telling everything out to everyone. This is not about the transparency even. It's not like you're telling every fucking thing to everyone. It's about how you're highlighting your challenges and trying to solve that problem. That is openness. Respect is not about thinking that you're helping everyone and becoming an hero. Openness and respect is about helping people to learn something. Okay, not to judge them that they are weak and you're strong. Courage is not that you're doing something which is not allowed, which is already been pushed back, and you're showing your courage to do something that is not even, you know, from your company is ready to it. So these are the misunderstanding the people have to get on the basis of these values. But we have to be very strict as an organizations. As an organizations, you have to be very strict on all those things if you're going about it. So what are the things? As courage, openness, commitment, respect, courage, commitment, focus, respect, and openness. So these are the five values that we are dealing with. Okay? Kofo kore op. Kofe kore op. Courage, focus, commitment, respect, openness. Courage, focus, commitment, respect, and openness. Are we done with this? Are we done with this? Are you able to learn it? Courage, focus, commitment, respect, and openness. And we have to learn this. We have to mug up it within ourselves, and we have to adhere it every time. Okay. So let's see this, and we have to implement this being as a Scrum Master. So we are done with this. Intralinks and case studies, Scrum values. This is happening. Time and values. Intralink's case study Scrum Reboot, this time with the values. In the first attempt at attaining agility, Intralinks took a well-intended mechanical implementation of Scrum, and done in a good faith and with a lot of hard work, but failed to deliver against their goal of a greater agility. So they look on a Scrum Reboot and succeeded with argumenting on the mechanics of Scrum with the fundamental idea of inspection and adaptation and the Scrum values of the courage, focus, openness, respect, and commitment. Courage, focus, openness, respect, and commitment. These provided the cultural environment necessary for the success and Intralinks made the success. Self-organizations, done means done, empowered product owners, servant leaders, Scrum Masters, Scrum team owners, user adaptations, and the delivery of focus and values. This is just a kind of a case study which is done on the Scrum guide, and to just go and reboot and rethink as as per the fundamentals of the Scrum that we need to inspect and adapt. So it goes on a study with a case study and then adapting itself with the new things. Scrum values, four ways to coach with the Scrum values. Visualizing Scrum values. How do I know if my team and demonstrating Scrum values? What can I use to show their current state? So let's see how anyone or any Scrum Master asks himself how they will know that their team is following their Scrum values. Remembering an exercise I did years ago at my local agile group, I thought I could use a spider web to visualize the state. So a big thank you to Agile Yorkshire. The exercise you used to it to rate yourself of agile against a list of questions, giving yourself 1 point of for each question you agreed with us, and mark result on a scale. Once completed, you should end up with something like this. So these are the five: focus, commitment, focus, courage, commitment, openness, and respect. Okay, so this is what is it. So this is kind of a web, and if we keep on asking questions and keep on answering it, we'll get it something like this. And so what questions did I ask? Courage is I work on the next highest priority product backlog item. I do not cherry pick up the work I pick up in the sprint. I work on the next highest priority product backlog. Okay. So courage is simply can be measured on I work on the next highest priority product backlog item. I do not cherry pick the work I pick up in the sprint. If I see something that is wrong with what I am being asked to do, I will say so. If I see something that is wrong with what I am being asked to do, I will say so. If something I can see is going wrong, if something that is wrong, if I see, I have to say it. I will question and reapproach my team members if I feel they are doing something wrong. Regardless of the person talking, I will correct them if I believe there's something incorrect. I will stand firm if I believe I'm right, even if I'm minority within the group. So this is all about courage. Courage is in the Scrum means if you see anything, if you see anything going bad, if you see anything going wrong inside your team, inside your project, within your within your work, you will definitely come back, stand to it, and show your courage towards it. And you will always try to work on the highest priority backlog, product backlog. Not going to cherry pick up anything that is very easy to do. That is called the courage. Mostly what is happening in the environments or in the organizations, in a team members, they always try to pick something which is very easy to do and try to save their time, try to save their efforts. But the courageous people always try to grab the opportunity, and this is called the opportunities also. The courage people are the opportunities. You always try to show your courage to work on the highest priority products. Okay, highest priority things. Commitment. I always know what the sprint goal is and how my work supported. I Commitment is I always know what the sprint goal is and how I work supported. I do everything I can ensure we achieve the goal of the sprint. In my current team, I have never thought of taking a sick day to avoid going to work. I always arrive on the time at events, and my colleagues never have to wait for me to start the event. I know what it means to say that an item is done. I know the criteria that meets the definition of done. So this is the commitments. Commitment is nobody can ask you questions because you're doing everything as appropriate as required. You always be on the time, you always do as per the goal required, you always support the team, you always support the timeline, you always support the sprints, you always be on the calls, you never take sick leaves. This is all about taking commitments. You always show yourself that yes, you are committed to the work. If there is requirement, and even if you are on a vacation, even if you are not needed that day, but you are showing yourself on because you committed to the work, that is all about the commitment. Courage is all about showing something which is unapproachable, which is most priority, and you showing your courage, like going on a production call, like doing something which is very important within your team, like noticing whether something is going wrong. That is courage. Focus. Focus is when it's working on a story, I do get distracted. If I'm not enjoying the work, even a story, I'll give it an attention to needs it. When I'm enjoying working on a story, I will not work on a story there just to prolong it. I do not procrastinate when working on a story. As soon as the story is ready to be moved in a new state, I will tell my colleagues and either hand it over to ensure that they know it ready to pick up. Okay, so focus is like giving yourself a focused mindset and not getting distracted with any other thing. If you're committed to something, and so that means you're focused should be on that thing. I do not procrastinate when working on a story. You have to work on a particular story, then you don't go along with any other story. So it's like giving your focus to one particular work, like one at a time, one committed thing at a time. Okay, openness is, do we talk about commitment, right? We talk about commitment. Commitment is all about this. Openness is I do not shy away telling difficult thing news to the teams. I do not hide every difficult issues. If something someone annoying me, I will address it. My colleagues can judge what state of mind I am. I always say the truth, state of the item, and do not. So it's about openness is all about not doing politics. Openness is all about open yourself for any reason, for any difficulty, for any problem, for any issues, for good, for bad, anything that is going inside you, within yourself, within your mindset, or within the team, or for the project. And it should always relate to the project. It should not from outside the world, okay? And respect is the most important thing. I listen with the equal intensity regardless who is talking. While listening to the people, I never ask them. So I value everyone's opinion. I never concern who works on what I can I backlog. I feel my opinion is respected. So these are the respected points. I mean, these are the things that we should respect on. We should respect each and every individuals in the team. We should respect each and everyone when anyone is talking. We should concern about if we are working on anybody's remaining work, we should do it. We should respect those person also. If he has done anything wrong also, we have to respect it. We have to complete it. We have to understand. We have to make sure understand that this could be we could do it in a different way also. So it's a kind of an opinion that you have to be with everyone regardless of who is in your team. So this is the result after you do all this, and if you work on this, you will come to these things to support and encourage people. And if people are not supporting, okay, so and that thing you will come across with a few days courage, focus, commitment, respect, and openness, and then you will be able to find out the difference between it and the people you are working with. They are following your rules or not. Four ways to coach with the Scrum values. So let's see. Okay, so it's a long topic, and we'll be able to cover it in the next sessions. So we'll do it in the next sessions, and it's all about like four ways to coach with the Scrum values is establish what Scrum values means to as an individual and as a team. use the Scrum values to help guide decision making, observe and discuss outcomes and behaviors, and redefine what Scrum values means to us, identify actions on improvement for improvement. So these are the basic things. Till the time you can go on the scrum.org and you can learn better from yourself also. I'm also going to make sure that we're going forward with the same. We'll be covering Scrum roles, Scrum events, and artifacts in the next session. And then we'll be going on to the developing people and teams, managing products and agility, developing and delivering products, then evolving the agile and organizations. Okay, so we have a lot of things. What we can do is we can try to register it so that we'll be able to go on and we can search on things. I hope you'll be able to relate with my things. You'll be able to relate with my things, whatever I'm saying. It's like search engine. You have to come here and you have to make your okay. Just try to do this. Submit. Welcome. Okay, so we are able to get it here. What is the Scrum? Wait. Okay. Okay. So this is all about today's sessions. We have learned so much, and we hopeful to see you in the next session. Thank you all.